you could make a list of all the biggest, baddest men in the entire history of professional wrestling, Big Van Vader would be near the top of everyone's list. A true mastodon who put legit fear in the eyes of anyone that faced him in the ring. There are so many legendary stories about the big man before he even came to the WWF in 1996. In 1987, Big Van Vader made his New Japan debut by defeating Antonio Inoki in 3 minutes. The audience was so upset that they rioted, resulting in New Japan being banned from the Sumo Hall, its home arena. The ban remained in effect until 1989. Vader was so tough that on October 12, 1990, during a match with Stan Hansen, Vader took a thumb to his eye, causing it to pop out of its socket. Vader then pushed it back in and wrestled for 12 more minutes. Vader was so strong and powerful that he broke the back of Joe Thurman in WCW with a deadly powerbomb.
Now here it comes, the moment, and right there he breaks the back of Joe Thurman.
As a kid, friends would tell me these crazy stories about Vader, and most of them sounded fake, except they weren't. Vader won the IWGP title and the WCW World Heavyweight Championship 3 times. It was these accolades and the amazing in-ring work of the big man that would grab the attention of the WWF. In the weeks leading up to Royal Rumble 1996, Vader was heavily hyped as the man they call Vader. These videos would show the Beast working out in the Rocky Mountains. Many of these shots were later used in his WWF entrance video. He would make his first appearance in the WWF Royal Rumble, entering at number 13. He was the newest member of Camp Cornette. Camp Cornette was a group ran by Jim Cornette. It consisted of Owen Hart, the British Bulldog, and Yokozuna. During the Royal Rumble match, Vader would eliminate Jake Roberts, Doug Gilbert, one member of the SWAT team, and Savio Vega. During the match, he even got into a fight with current Camp Cornette member Yokozuna. Eventually, Shawn Michaels was able to eliminate both of the big men at the same time. He would get back in the ring and take his frustrations out, throwing Shawn over the top. This wouldn't count, however, and Gorilla Monsoon would eventually come down to the ring and send Vader to the back. The next night on Raw, Vader would defeat Savio Vega in impressive fashion. After the match, Vader would continue attacking Savio Vega and delivering a Vader bomb to him. Vader then destroyed multiple referees and even Gorilla Monsoon. Vader would splash Gorilla Monsoon in the corner and then deliver the Vader bomb to him. As a result, Vader would be suspended. In reality, Vader needed time off for shoulder surgery. Jim Cornette campaigned for Vader to be reinstated. By the time Vader made his return, Yokozuna had left Camp Cornette. In February's In Your House 6, Vader appeared during Yokozuna's match against the British Bulldog, as Yokozuna was about to pin the British Bulldog. Vader attacked him, handcuffed him, and delivered a severe beating. This led to what was supposed to be a one-on-one match with Vader and Yokozuna at WrestleMania 12. However, the match became a 6-man tag with Vader, Owen, and the Bulldog against Yokozuna, Ahmed Johnson, and Jake the Snake Roberts. The stipulation that if Yokozuna's team would win, he would have 5 minutes in the ring with Cornette. This never occurred as Vader teams won the match, with Vader picking up the pin over Jake the Snake Roberts. Vader's biggest feud would be with the World Wrestling Federation champion, Shawn Michaels. In the summer of 1996, Vader would attack Shawn Michaels in a match. At In Your House 9, he would compete in a 6-man tag as Vader, Owen Hart, and the British Bulldog teamed up against Shawn Michaels, Ahmed Johnson, and Sycho Sid. Vader would pin Shawn Michaels to win the match for his team. A few months leading up to SummerSlam 1996, Shawn Michaels and Vader would be on the house show loop. Vader would lose every one of those matches to Shawn Michaels and the Sweet Chin Music. This would end up hurting the buy rate for the 1996 SummerSlam. The match at SummerSlam is great. Vader demolished Shawn the entire match. He battered him inside the ring, he battered him outside the ring, and while Shawn did get a few shots in and a cool suicide dive, Vader was clearly in control of this match and made him look like a true monster. There was one point during the match, however, that was kind of weird. Shawn Michaels went to the top rope to deliver an elbow, and then landed on his feet and started yelling at Vader and stomped him in the face. Shawn was pissed that the match wasn't going as planned. I assume that Vader either was too far away or he was supposed to move out of the way. Either way, Shawn was acting very unprofessional, something that he was known for doing at this time. Vader would win the match via countout, but Cornette asked Shawn to continue, as the title doesn't change hands in a countout. Vader then won again via DQ as Shawn used Jim Cornette's tennis racket. The match was restarted again, and Shawn would get a victory after a moonsault put Vader down. This was a great way to show off the power Vader had, and it really made him look like a monster. The main issue was that the buy rate for WWE SummerSlam 1996 was very low. The 1996 show did a mere 157,000 buys, making it the only SummerSlam to have failed 200,000 buys. WWE would claim that it was Vader's fault for the low buy rate, where Vader would claim that it was the fact that Shawn beat Vader at every house show leading up to SummerSlam, thus making fans lose interest in the main event. Vader being in the title picture severely shifted after this. The original plan, according to Vader, was to have him beat Shawn, then Bret would beat him, and he would regain the title from Bret. Then Shawn would beat him, and Vader would be a two-time champion. But after the low buy rate, Vader was phased out of the title picture, and Sycho Sid was put in his place. Sid would defeat Vader at In Your House 11 Buried Alive in a number one contender match for the world title. The original plan that Vader laid out, it happened. Sid would go on to beat Shawn at Survivor Series for the world title, a spot, well, it was ultimately meant for Vader. The one main reason the title swap even became about was because Shawn refused to lose to Bret Hart, so they needed an audible, and they gave the belt to Sid. At Survivor Series, Vader would be a part of the traditional Survivor Series match, a 4-on-4 match that ended in a no contest. Following pay-per-view? Well, that was called In Your House, It's Time. The pay-per-view was practically named after Vader and his catchphrase, It's Vader Time. However, Vader was nowhere to be on the pay-per-view. His next big program would be at the Royal Rumble 1997, where he defeated The Undertaker. He would defeat The Undertaker after Paul Bearer turned on him and joined Vader. He and The Undertaker would be in the Royal Rumble match, and they would make it to the Final Four. Stone Cold would get eliminated in the Royal Rumble match, but ended up sneaking back in as the referees didn't see Austin get eliminated. Austin would then go on and eliminate everybody and win the Royal Rumble match. The controversy turned into a match at In Your House 13 Final Four. It was Stone Cold versus Bret Hart versus The Undertaker and Vader, with the winner going on to WrestleMania. Well, the match was supposed to have the winner go on. However, on a Thursday episode of Raw, Shawn Michaels lost his smile and vacated the title. This led the match at In Your House Final Four to be for the WWE Championship. Bret Hart would win the match and the title, and then Sid would win it from Bret. Taker would win it from Sid at WrestleMania. Let's say that Shawn Michaels had caused a lot of problems around this time. At WrestleMania 13, Owen and the British Bulldog would defend the tag team titles against Vader and Mankind. This was nothing special, and it just ended up in a double countout. Vader wouldn't really do much until In Your House 16 Canadian Stampede, where he faced off against The Undertaker for the WWF Championship. The Undertaker was originally supposed to face Ahmed Johnson, who had recently turned heel during a tag match as Taker's partner, and he joined the Nation of Domination. Ahmed got hurt and had to be pulled from the storyline. Vader, who was being managed by The Undertaker's former manager Paul Bearer, became a last-minute replacement, and now Bearer was seeking revenge on The Undertaker. This was a good match with Vader looking great, but The Undertaker won with the Tombstone. The match wasn't even the main event, as the whole focus was centered around the Hart Foundation and the 10-man tag match main event. The next program Vader would enter would be Team USA versus Team Canada feud, with Vader being the leader of Team USA. There's nothing really notable about this other than Team USA versus Team Canada match would be at Survivor Series, seeing Team Canada win. The last notable moment for Vader in the WWF was when he had a mask versus mask match with Kane at In Your House Over the Edge 1998. Previously that year, Paul Bearer would turn on Vader and he would side with Kane. Kane and Vader then had a mask versus mask match, with Vader losing this. He had to take his mask off. Paul Bearer would give us one of the greatest moments of all time when he danced with the Vader mask on. After the match, Vader would be interviewed and go on to cut the famous promo that everybody knows, the big fat piece of shit interview.
I'm nothing but a big piece of shit. Big fat piece of shit.
After this, Vader would basically become a jobber in the WWE until he left. At one point, he was even contemplating retirement until he asked for his release. After leaving the WWF, he did end up getting some of that monster aura back until about 2003 as he returned to Japan and wrestled for All Japan and Noah. He would have a few one-off appearances in WWE in 2005, 2012, and 2016, but he sadly passed away in 2018 battling pneumonia. The story of Vader in WWE is a sad one. Here was the man they call Vader, the mastodon, one of the best big men in the entire professional wrestling business, who became a shell of himself in his time in WWE. He was so deflated that he even considered retiring from the business before he asked for his release. Vader was almost like an urban legend that didn't seem real. Tales about what he did overseas would be told by fans until he came to the WWF in 1996. When Vader came in, he was instantly built like a monster, and then he was sidelined with an injury. When Vader came back, he did get in a world title match with Shawn Michaels. This was great for him. However, they never pulled the trigger and gave him the title. Whether it was the poor buy rate, Shawn Michaels politicking, or Vince McMahon not really understanding who Vader was never given a chance with the WWF Championship. One other major issue with Vader in WWE was his constant battle to stay healthy. He also had a constant battle with his weight. Sure, the Vader of Japan and WCW prior to his WWE run was not the same. The schedule wasn't the same. The match styles were a bit different. However, you could have worked with what Vader had. Vader was one of those legends that had an aura about them. Vader was different and truly scary. You would see him as a kid and you would get legit scared. He did his job and made everyone believe that he was the toughest guy in the room. Vader should have had a chance with the WWF World Championship, but it never panned out for him. Vader was constantly being hidden in multi-tag matches and put in factions. This made Vader blend in with everyone else and never let him be a true standout that he could be. If you want to see how Vader could have been used properly, just look at the way they used Brock Lesnar in WWE after he came back from the UFC. Vader could have been booked just the same. He should have been used as an attraction, put in big matches where he looks dominant most of the time. Didn't need to have crazy 30-minute matches. They just needed to stay short and sweet and let him show off most of his power. Sadly, his WWF run wasn't more than it could have been.